Hey YouTube!
Hi, I'm Aaron, and this is my wonderful wife from A Wonderful Life, Tammy.
It is a wonderful
And she
life.
is styling her glittery hat from New York.
It's true. It is glittery. Hey YouTube! So we are wanting to talk to you today about grief and grief when it comes to death of a parent specifically. So unfortunately, both Aaron and I have been through this experience and twice now. So
Well, twice between us, we both lost
right.
a father.
That's right. That's true. Even talking about it is something that we're getting used to. But so I want to talk about my experience specifically. So I was in a space where I was traveling for work a couple of weeks ago. I was in New Jersey. I was on the East Coast traveling for work. And I got a phone call after one of my work presentations that my dad had passed away. Um, And I had always imagined that when one of my parents passed away, that I would have Aaron um, pretty close by. We really, for our going on 19 years of being married, before now, I'd say before this last year, we probably had been apart a handful of times.
For no more than like 3 or 4 days.
Exactly. And so, so now it's just sort of a new normal for us of something that we're getting used to where I'm gone a little bit more with my job. And so I had just always imagined that when that time came, he would be close by. And so here I was, a, what felt like a billion miles from home, and got this news. But when I got the news, honestly, there was not a whole lot of reaction from me. My relationship with my father was complicated. It was not like losing a best friend or um, losing someone very, very close to me. And so this has been a whole different grief process for me. Not that I didn't love my dad, I did love my dad. And I think that sometimes that's what made the whole relationship harder, is that I really struggled with knowing or feeling that he loved me a whole lot. And he did love me, I know that, but it's just been a really complicated relationship with him my whole life. And so here I am trying to wrap my head around the fact that my dad died, and that's kind of how I reacted, was my dad just died. And so I moved on to my next thing with work, and called and told Aaron, and we told the kids together. So we did find a way in that time to connect. So we connected together, but then as a family we connected, even though it was over the phone, we still connected and we still did it together as a family. And then there was a whole lot of complications that came out of the situation, because I still needed to be a family with my siblings. And so my brother flew from Alaska right away to go down to Arizona, which is where my dad was, and take care of affairs. And all three of us girls in our family decided that we just couldn't leave him to do that on his own. And so I was not at home to make any decisions with Aaron. It was really hard. It was hard because he was gone. He was doing his thing that he had to do at home. He was taking care of the kids, and he was doing his thing, and I was doing mine. And we had suddenly to make really quick decisions, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. But it was hard because I had to decide, am I going to go home first and then drive from where we live to where he lives, which is 8 hours, or am I going to change my flights and kind of figure out a different way to get there, which is what I ended up doing. But I do think that the communication for us, I'm grateful that we've learned communication over the years, because I do think that we handled it better than we would have 5-10 years ago maybe. And so I think we handled it better because we've learned how to communicate a lot more.
Can I interject?
Please do. Yeah.
I'm only gonna point out that you may get the idea that we communicate perfectly and this all went smoothly, but it really didn't. I mean, we're not perfect. The situation was terrible. Very sad circumstances for her dad, and she was needing more for me than I had to offer at the moment. Um, I didn't. Anyways, without getting too far down the rabbit hole of how it all went,
We struggled. I think it's a good
we
point.
struggled for probably a whole day.
Yeah, it was hard.
And to be fair, I mean, you were you may have been subconsciously starting to deal with the grief process, and I was not at the end because we had more to do after that, but I was at the moment at the end of like 2.5 weeks of her being gone,
being a single dad and school starting,
being a solo parent and school starting for the year. And so, you know, I was very thin as far as having patience and being helpful and just having responses that were great. And she was going through a process of grief, and she had also been away from home. So anyways,
I had been away from home for like
a
couple of weeks. I was already at the end.
3 weeks at the end of that
Yeah, it had almost been 3 weeks, and I was tired already. I just was so done with being away from home, and so this came at a really a really hard time for me. And like I said, the first 24 hours, I don't really think that I let it. I don't know. It sounds terrible. Let it bother me. I was like, oh, this is just a thing we got to deal with. But it was that last day that we started fighting a little bit on the phone because I think I was subconsciously starting to go through that grief and needing him, but he was in a different space. That was really hard. You're right. I've kind of forgotten about that. A lot's happened since then. So we still worked through it. And I will say that Aaron, there was a point in time where Aaron finally just kind of gave me the permission to do what I needed to do. And I feel like that's when I started to be okay more with making some decisions, because at the time I didn't feel like I could make any decisions without him. And when he kind of gave me that permission to do what you need to do and I will support it, that's when I felt like things started to move forward a little.
Yeah, because sometimes when challenges show up, you don't always have the convenience of being able to convene as a group, as a couple, and talk things through. Sometimes you just have to figure things out on the fly.
Yeah.
Which we've learned here and there over the years, but this is obviously probably the biggest situation that we've had to deal with on the fly. And so it had to be a matter of, you know what, I didn't feel like we needed to discuss every aspect of what needed to happen together. I figured she knew what she needed to do, and we trust each other enough that I just plan what you need to plan, and we'll work it out. We'll be here when you get home.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened, and so that's what we did. And I was able to go home. I don't really like calling it home because it's not home, but back to where I grew up, and took care of things with my siblings, and then headed back home. And that drive home was really hard. I think that drive home is when I really had time to wrap my head around it. And it was right before I left, actually, to drive home. There's a couple who I grew up with, and they had wanted to see me, and I had wanted to see them really bad. And so we went to coffee before I left. And growing up, he really was kind of a second dad to me. And when he hugged me, it was a dad kind of hug. And that's when I feel like I finally was like, oh, there's this grief of losing a dad. And so regardless of what that relationship was or wasn't, it didn't matter. I had lost a dad. And so from there going home, I was now really tired, and I don't do well
full on in the midst of grief.
Yeah, I don't do well when I'm tired. So to add grief to it and not being able to have him. So we always tease that I have a method of recharge or a method of comfort, and it is physical. And so Aaron will sometimes give me a hug, or I swear touch me with a toe, and it recharges me, and I didn't have that. And so I think I finally, didn't I? I finally lost it on you a little bit on the way home. Like I finally was just like, ah! And I think I don't even know. Do you remember? I just remember kind of losing it on the way home and crying and just being like, you don't get it. I'm tired. I'm grieving.
I think half the time when it happened, you weren't even on the phone.
No, that's probably true.
But yeah, I mean, there was a time or two when we were talking, and she would just something would set her off into just feeling sad,
Mm,
and
yeah.
it's those times where I guess you really have to understand each other as spouses.
The spouses? Yeah.
um, what the other one is going to need. I mean, you
Hmm.
can't always prepare for every situation, but
Hmm.
you know, I've known Tammy long enough that when she just needs to get things out, sometimes she wants to hear comfort, sometimes she wants to hear decisions, and sometimes she doesn't want to hear anything.
Sometimes, yeah,
Sometimes
that's
there's
true.
nothing to offer.
And honestly, let's get real. Sometimes we just have to tell each other. And right? Like I feel like I had to do that with him. Was like when I get home. Do you remember me telling you that? I was like, when I get home, what I need from you is X, Y, Z.
Well, yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the probably the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can get to the point where you can communicate clearly, and be able to think about things without being distracted by you know really sad thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's kind of where I guess the meat comes into where you're communicating as a couple.
Yeah, because
And
I.
that's where the marriage part really kind of kicks in, where you have to tell each other, this is
Yeah.
what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of times, yes, I know sometimes what she needs, based on what her response is and what she's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not telepathic, and I don't know if we've actually said that in a video, which we probably should do a video about your spouse
You're
isn't
not used,
telepathic,
or you don't. Your spouse doesn't have
because
ESP.
we're all just people, and sometimes we just need to hear what
Mm-hmm.
a person needs.
Especially because we don't really even know ourselves when you're going through grief. If you've been through it or your spouse has been through it, you don't even sometimes know what you need, and sometimes you do. But either way, you've got to communicate that. I do remember specifically on the phone telling Aaron, I am going to want more sex than usual. I want to have sex. Like when I get home, that's what I need that. Aaron, when he lost his dad, he grieved in an entirely different way, and we had to be patient with each other, and we were not perfect at it. And even in this scenario, like Aaron said, we haven't been perfect at it, but we've been able to recover because we've been given enough tools over the years that we've been able to figure out how to get back on track. And I feel like that's probably the best way to say it, is that when you get off track because you haven't been through this experience before, you're going to make mistakes with each other, and you've got to be able to give each other grace, and you've got to be able to forgive each other in both, like both situations.
So this, I think we're getting to the point where
Mhm.
we should wrap up this video. I think there's a lot more we can talk about
Mhm.
that we can probably add in another video
Yeah, I
when it comes to
agree.
grief.
Mhm.
But let's, as a challenge this
Mhm.
week,
Oh, good. Yeah.
why don't you guys find a time for a coffee break, or something where you can talk together
Mhm.
and communicate something this week that you need from each other.
Yeah, that's good. We like to give action steps. Our last video we didn't, but this one I think is important too that we do. And Aaron's right. We probably have some more to cover because this is still really pretty fresh. It's only been a few weeks. And so we may be covering a few more videos on grief as we roll through this. But that being said, shoot us up an email if you have any questions or comments at a sold out marriage at gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube to like us.
So if you like these videos, like it, subscribe to our channel, and push notifications. Remember, our book is on Amazon, Beginning of a Path to a Sold Out Marriage.
The beginning of a journey to a sold out
Yeah,
marriage.
beginning of a journey.
You know, we have a long title and sometimes we even forget it. But check it out on Amazon.
And then Instagram and all
Yeah.
those cool things. So we'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye, YouTube.